Hello there and welcome to the program. I am Imonia Marire. On this edition, we shall focus on a subject matter that has come to affect our daily socio-economic life in Nigeria, the telecommunications sector. Labor unions under the aegis of the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) are up in arms. They are set to embark on nationwide protests on Tuesday, February 3, against the recent increase in tariff by the telecommunications operators. The 50% hike approved by the Nigerian Communications Commission (NCC) is said to be the first significant adjustment in telecommunications tariffs in over a decade. The decision will mean a 50% raise in rates for calls, short messages, and internet bundles, which we popularly refer to as data. The NCC has justified this move on rising operational costs and the need to ensure the sustainability of the telecom sector. The operators who demanded the increase say the cost-reflective tariffs will incentivize investments and improve service quality. But consumers and labor unions have opposed the increase, describing it as too steep. Some subscribers are asking for a reduction from 50% to 10%. But Labour is in fact calling for a potential boycott of telecom services if the tariff hike is not reduced from 50% to 5%. This development is coming against the backdrop of economic challenges in Nigeria, including a high cost of living crisis that has sunk many families into deeper poverty. Yet some others say the telecom sector is private sector driven and has a need for survival if it must provide quality services as well as make some profit. Where then does the balance lie between ensuring the financial health of the telecom sector and addressing consumers' affordability concerns? How far can the planned labor protests go in affecting the proposed tariffs hike? Will it change anything? What options are open to government, the operators, labor, and the subscribers themselves? These are the issues we will be looking at on the program today. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment and we will be meeting our guest analysts.
Area of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT. When the issues are critical, germane to Nigeria's democratic process,
politicians can only be seen maybe on television by judges. They should not intermingle, because once you intermingle, then you destroy the systems.
When the personalities are big, important to national discourse.
When you reach certain stage in power and you demonstrate arrogance to the extreme, there's no other thing that will happen to you other than to fall.
When the developments are seemingly complex, confounding like a 1,000-piece jigsaw, that's when we require bold, sound, and analytical minds to help put the pieces together. Jigsaw with Benga Arileba, now showing Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. on AIT. Jigsaw, demystifying the issues.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's get to meet our guest analysts now. We have on the panel today a representative of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Honorable Uche Ekwe, who is the head of international relations of the NLC, is joining us virtually. from here in the nation's capital, Abuja. He will be with us in a short while. And we also have joining us Mr. Tony Izuagbe Emokpai. He's the President, Association of Telecommunications Companies of Nigeria. Thank you so much, Mr. Emokpai, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. And we will also be joined here in the studio by engineer Ugwegbolam Chidiebere, who is the chairman, Nigeria Computer Society, Imo State chapter, and director, Tech Ecosystem Development and Stakeholders Engagement for Young Innovators of Nigeria. He will be joining us in a while. But let's begin this way, Mr. Emokpai. As an association, were you privy to this, the decision by the NCC based on the demand of the operators for this increase?
In fact, we have been clamoring for this increase for several years. So it has been several years in the making, so to speak. It's been a big challenge the industry has been facing for several years. So we are indeed aware of the increase.
All right. When you clamored for this increase, was there a benchmark that you put out there? Was 50% your demand?
Well, the increase has been based on several studies. In fact, at a certain point, because of the protracted nature of the fact that tariff have been stagnant for such a very long time, from different quarters, as much as 100% was even asked for. So 50% for something that has been stagnant for over 10 years. It's still a challenge, but something that we're willing to work with.
Now, given the economic situation in the country today, I'm sure you are very much abreast with that. Do you think that this is the appropriate time for the increase to happen?
There is never an appropriate time for this, and the reason why it's unfortunate is because, and is being felt this drastically, is because it has been stagnant for several years. Had it been this was a gradual increase, we wouldn't be talking about a 50% increase. Even the increase that we're talking about was based on a study that was done as far back, I think it was 2018 or thereabout. So it's not the fact that there's never a good time, but the issue is that we need the sector to be sustainable. We need to ensure quality of service. We need to ensure that the consumer gets the service they desire and they require. And if we cannot, this industry cannot sustain this quality of service, will not be attained. So these are some of the indices that are pushing this increase. That's considering also the prevailing economic challenges that all sectors have been facing. I mean, if the power sector had a 300% increase, and it's not like the tariff has been stagnant even up until the 300% increase. Tariff for power sector has been increasing steadily. The telecom sector, which is purely a private sector driven industry, but still being held back by these laws. Okay, I think they have done extremely well to even sustain their businesses up until this time.
Well, we'll come to the issue of quality of services in a short while. But first, let's talk about these studies that you have been talking about. What was the study about, and from what period to what period? What were the parameters for that study that you talk about?
Well, all the issues that we are talking about are both part of the factors that are always going to the study. The cost of doing business, the cost of investment, the economic situation in the country. These are all factors that factor into the studies that are being used to determine what tariffs. So tariffs are not just increased arbitrarily, and even by the regulation, they are not done in that manner. Studies are being done. All indices are take into account the cost of operations, the cost of investment, the economic climate, and all other indices. Also benchmarking our tariffs against other economies around and similar economies. These are all the studies that are being done before tariffs are just increased. So they're not even done arbitrarily at all.
Now, let's look at the period, I mean, the 10-year or more period during which tariffs had not been increased at all. What was responsible for that? Was it that the operators were very comfortable with what they were charging and getting? We note that year after year, the operators have, in fact, declared very huge profits, one year after the other. Why did you have to wait until this time to demand the increase in tariff?
Well, when you say waiting up on this time to demand increase in tariffs, it was not. Nobody has been waiting up until this time. Okay, but you have to agree that in the last 3 to 4 years, the pressures in all industries have increased tremendously. Several factors have been made the whole challenge very unsustainable. You know, things like the increase in cost of doing business and also inflationary issues, and as well as the drastic fall of the value of the currency. These are indices and factors that have made it almost unsustainable. When you say that the operators declare several profits, all these profits are actually continuously reinvested back into providing infrastructure. So infrastructure is continuously growing and continuously being invested in by the operators. So it's not like this profit is being taken away. It's continuously being plowed back into the business. And at a certain point, you will not have enough to continue to sustain that industry. This is why we are where we are today.
Mr. Makpai, we'll bring in the labor representative in a short while. But before we do that, let's talk about the quality of services that are offered by the operators over this period. Many people note that the quality of service has declined over time. Indeed, these days, connectivity is a major problem, even in the urban centers. But first, let's look at what I would describe as the level of connectivity in the country today. Can you speak to that? What's the level of connectivity across Nigeria today for all the operators or some of the operators?
Well, when you talk about level of connectivity, there are several indices you should look at. But the broad index that we'd like to look at is the broadband penetration. Okay, so as it stands at last December, the regulator had really fine-tuned all the parameters in which to use to determine that value, and I think it came to about 44.3 to 45% thereabout. So that is where we are at the moment, and which is where it's still a bit far from where we desire as a country to be. So these challenges need to be surmounted, and the sustainability of the industry is what is required to surmount these challenges.
Very quickly, 44% penetration level. What do you think are the main challenges that has left the level of penetration at that level?
Well, there are several challenges, this tariff being one of them. Okay, I think we take this communication we have for granted, because some of us don't know where we are coming from. At the time the sector was liberalized in 2000, the national operator was basically comatose. So most of the operators had to build infrastructure from scratch. And in other countries and in other climes, even in Africa, when you liberalize your sector, you rely on the incumbent national operator and the infrastructure that they have already in place. So that allows you to continue providing service and with limited investment. But in Nigeria, that was not the case in Nigeria. All operators had to keep on investing, and they are still investing in providing this infrastructure. So the gap that has to be surmounted is huge. If you have a country that has had investment in communication for over 30 years. Okay, I mean, and then you are now trying to build that same infrastructure in a short period of time. It's something that is difficult to surmount. But I think even kudos has to be given to the regulator and the government and even the private sector as to get where we are today, considering where we're coming from. The number of telephone lines we had were less than, were in the hundreds of thousands. Today, we're talking of hundreds of millions. So I think, by and large, we have done extremely well. And of course, because of where we are coming from is why we have this gap today.
All right, Mr. Mokpa, please stay with us. Let me bring in the representative of the NLC now, Honorable Uche Ekwe, who is the head of the international relations of the NLC. I'm sure he has been listening to Mr. Mokpa, who has been telling us why the operators need this tariff increase to survive. Mr. Honorable Ekwe, what exactly is labor's grouse with the increase? 50%. I am aware that Labour is insisting that it will go on protest next week, February 3rd, if the increase by 50% is not brought down to as much as 5%. Honorable, you need to unmute your system so that we can hear you here.
Yeah, are you hearing me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, is that the warning protest is for 4th of February. And we say if they now go ahead with the 50% increase, then other actions will follow. First, that there is no place in the world, and I'm happy. The man was talking about other places and giving us also an example where you do 50% increase in tariff or anything whatsoever. Now, they talked about the economic environment. At times, it sounds as if the people, the ordinary people who pay these subscriptions, are isolated from all those indices you have mentioned. The same people are paying the price for in all the areas where the economic pressure have come up. Now, he also talked about conditions in other countries. But I'm happy because he alluded that they started at ground zero. But in that allusion, he said that we have about a couple of thousands of subscribers. And now we have over 200 million. Simple economics tells you that the higher the number, the more money you make. Even the entire Europe can be ranging at about 200 million. Europe together, not like UK. They are talking about one country, about 200 million. Remember, the BBC did an analysis where they concluded that the best place to do business of telecommunication is Nigeria. Because here people call and call without bothering. But I also want him to avert his mind to the example they give that some of the industries are going down. They should also check. Because even if you do a 50% increase and force it, and out of the 200 million subscribers, only 50 can sustain. Would they not be the losers? Have they averted their mind to that? That if you have 10 persons that buy things at 10,000 naira, and you have 200 people that buy at 1,000 naira, that you sell more and make more profit. So, have they averted their mind that poor families, their children are in universities, in secondary schools that do their exams or assess their results through data? Have they thought of what will happen to them if they cannot afford anymore to use data? What have gone or what have happened to their social responsibility fund? What have happened? Because you talked about, you made a point. It is public knowledge. The ones they declare, not the one they didn't declare. The humongous profits they have been making over the years. Have they put back that money back to the society? How have they done that? Of course, the issue of quality of even quality delivery is still a major issue. So clearly, the players in the industry are just interested in making profit, maximizing profit, and care less about service delivery, expansion, and reach. Now, probably, they are no more making the kind of massive profit they are making. Now, we must pay for that new circumstances. Meanwhile, we are paying for the circumstances created by those environments, which is price of diesel, gas, electricity, which they are complaining about. Other people are already paying for all of them. And they want to include again a new term, the minimum wage. In calculation of the minimum wage, government came with a position of the ability to pay. Ability to pay must be an issue in this tariff adjustment.
Honorable Uche, please go ahead. We're listening to you.
Yeah. So the issue of the ability to pay can be picked and dropped when it is favorable. What is the ability of the man in the street? Some people used to get data of 200 naira. Some get 50 naira. They switch off. Yes. Their own record shows that 9Mobile, their subscription this is going down. When we go down, it becomes impossible for people to make use. Apart from people putting out, the consequences where the education sector have also decided that most exams, most studies are done online. Have they thought of the students? What will happen to the students who will not be in a position to be able, who their parents, who pay, receive a wage structure that they can pay? Or should that be a way of creating more illiterate people? Will that help the system in the long run? If we have more people who cannot access their education anymore, who will drop out of school, or who will not pass their exams because they can't do online studies anymore. But they talk about over all this. This is the reason why for us it is unacceptable and we will resist the increase.
All right, so Honorable Uche, what do you think, or what does Labour think the planned protest will achieve? The Alcon has argued, Mr. Mokpai has argued that, look, and many, I mean, all of them in the sector argue along the same line, that, look, the telecom sector is private sector driven, and they too have a right to survive and to sustain the services in the sector.
Yeah, I agree with you. They are private sector. They have the right to try to survive. We are individuals of the citizen of the environment where that private sector exists. We will also decide if we can live with those decisions of the private sector. Because I think they talk as if it is mutually exclusive. That the private sector, who are they private and sectoring? Is it not the Nigerian people that tend to tax more? So those Nigerian people that are taxing more also have the right. The private sector feel that they can maximize profit at the detriment of the blood of the people they're supposed to be providing services from. The people at the minimum can also resist, protect that attempt to stifle them.
All right, Mr. Mokbae, let's hear your response to some of these issues that Honorable Uche has thrown up. One, for instance, is did you or the operators in the sector consider the fact that there could be a drop, a very steep drop in subscription with this price increase? That people might decide at the end of the day that, look, we can no longer afford it. And it has also brought in the element of students who have to use your data and your services for academic purposes and all of that. So is this a concern? Did the operators consider all of these in agitating for the increase and agreeing to the 50% increase?
I think the Honorable Uchenna, I think we need to take part some of these issues and balance them out. Okay, I think there is no way any operator will provide a service that will be priced out totally out of.
Mr. Mokpa, are you still there? We appear to have lost your voice.
And also, the regulator is applying it on a case-by-case basis. So even this protest is still a bit premature. We still don't. You have not seen any pronouncement. You have not seen the actual tariff. You have not seen the actual rates. So I think it's a bit premature to say that the 50% is not the same across different operators. Charge different rates for different services. So it's not going. Nobody's going to go into business and price himself out of the business. It's not possible. The consumer is who we are serving, and it's the consumer we provide the service to. There are studies that have been done to show that this increase is sustainable. And another issue we need to also understand is that once quality of a service improves, if you say, for example, you spend 200 naira on data, what you should be asking is that what amount of data or what amount of connectivity do I have for that money I spend? What do I do during that period? People talk about at times their services cut off, things of that nature. But once the service improves, you will get more pound or more value for your naira, and that will be as a result of improved quality of service. So I think what we should be thinking about is, okay, how do we ensure that the service that is being delivered to the consumer is increased and is better? The clamor, and he stated that the operators are there making profit. They have been making profit for the last several years, and I beg to differ in some instances. If somebody has been keeping a price for such a long period of time, he has been depleting his revenues. He even made a mention of Nine Mobile. They have been expending all the monies they have been generating. You generate, you reinvest. You generate, you reinvest. At a certain point, if you're not generating enough to reinvest, you start to go down. So, and this is, like you rightly said, this is a private sector. If you are stifled with not being able to charge economic rates, you cannot grow as an industry, and you cannot provide this service that we're talking about. There is no, I think it's a bit of alarmist to say children will be cut off from education. No, such a thing can never occur. That is.
If they are unable to afford your rates, they will be cut off, definitely.
No, the issue is not affording of rates. The issue is not affording of rates. The issue is that if you spend 200 naira, for example, like the example he made, what do you get out of that 200 naira? So what do you get out of that 200 naira? Let me throw something to you which some of us don't even know. A lot of people have, for example, up to 20, 30 applications installed on their mobile phones. These applications continuously update. in the background, eating up your data. But because you are not aware and because the tariff is so low, you don't take those into cognizance. There are people now, the reason why some people, they say they switch on their data, it goes quickly. You'll be surprised that some of these applications are continuously updating themselves. This is just one example of how we need to become more aware of how we utilize our communication services. He mentioned that there is nowhere that there's ever been such an increase, but we are in this Nigeria here where the power sector had over a 300% increase. And what has that forced us to do? It has forced us to manage our energy more efficiently. We now manage our energy usage more efficiently. And it's not like before this 300% increase, there was no increase in tariff before then in the power sector.
So, Mr. Mokpai, let me ask very quickly.
I think it's a bit unfair to single out a sector that is providing a critical service that empowers all businesses in the country. I'm communicating to you now, my dear friend on the other line. He's communicating to you now via communication services. We don't have to travel all the way to Olagbado anymore or travel to Abuja to be on this program. And these are services that are being provided by these operators. How do you want them to sustain these services? How do you want them to grow?
Okay, Mr. Mokpai, very quickly.
This call has not blinked since I've been on it. Even my brother, his call has not blinked.
We are happy to note that.
It hasn't blinked.
We are happy to note that it has not blinked today, but it does blink from time to time. I can tell you that.
No, I beg to differ. Over the last year, the regulator has clamped, because this thing has, like your first question to me was whether we are aware of this coming in. This has been on the offering for over a long period of time. And the regulator had clamped down heavily on operators, giving them several quality of service benchmarks for them to meet before they could even open the door to even listen to this conversation. And you can go to the regulator's website. Over the last year, quality of the service has drastically improved. And there are still several other issues that affect operators. And I'm happy the man from Labour is here so that he can help us with some of these challenges. We still have a
okay, Mr. Mokpai. So are you planning? I mean, are the operators planning on carrying out an enlightenment campaign, for instance, to enlighten subscribers on how they can reduce their spend on whether calls, data, or whatever? You recall that in this 2025 budget, the Ministry of Power is asking for 7 whole billion or 8 billion naira to carry out enlightenment campaigns on how people should manage their power systems. Are the operators thinking of something along that line? Mr. Mokpai, are you still with us? Well, we appear to have lost Mr. Mokpai momentarily, but it's okay. We have now been joined by Engineer Ugwegbulam Chidiebere, who is the chairman, Nigeria's Computer Society, Imo State chapter. He's also Director, Tech Ecosystem Development and Stakeholders Engagement for Young Innovators in Nigeria. Mr. Chidiebere, thank you so much for joining us. I needed to emphasize the fact that you are Director, Tech Ecosystem Development and Stakeholders Engagement for Young Innovators in Nigeria, because young people are very active in the social media space these days. And all of it depends on their ability to afford the telecom services. Yes. So this 50% increase that has now been approved by NCC, how do you and young people like you feel about it?
Well, the increase will no doubt affect the grappling that we are trying to do on economic systems in Nigeria. Look at the amount of money we spend on data every day. when the tariff have not been increased. Now, I think what will happen now that it's increased, we are not only talking about individuals now. From the young innovators' view, we are talking about the startups, the SMEs that depend on this data to promote their business. It's not just only social media chatting. We depend on this data for education, to do online trainings. We depend on it to assess some level of healthcare. Some of those that have businesses depend on this data to promote their business, to even run the business.
A lot of businesses
itself.
have gone online
Yes,
now. Yes,
almost all the businesses. In fact, if a business is not leveraging on tech, we can't call it a startup. That's what differentiates a startup from the ancient way of doing business. Both of them are business, but for it to be a startup, it have to have a kind of leverage, a kind of a pivotal support from the tech, that which is data that we're talking about. So this will now increase, this tariff now will affect the operating cost of these businesses, and this will tell on their marginal profit. So this actually will affect them in a way that the businesses is going to slow down. Some of them might even close shop if the tariff continues to be this way. But from the young innovators' view also, we don't want to be one-sided, even though we have noticed the effect that this will have on the ecosystem. We're also looking at the service provision, the importance of having a reliable connectivity on the internet. Because the future now is now looking at streaming. We are now looking at virtual reality. We are looking at living more on data. And we need it to be more stable. Currently, we have not been having a stable network. If you're having a Zoom meeting now, for instance, before you do the meeting for 10 minutes, you see a lot of people disconnecting, connecting back because data is not stable. Even you that is talking, at a time you discover that you have even been disconnected from the Zoom network. So if what the telecoms are promising us is that with this increase, that they are going to expand the 4G, 5G coverage, they are going to ensure stable connectivity, because this increase will mean more revenue to them. What are they going to do with this extra revenue? So if NCC will promise us that they are going to be on their neck to see that there is increase in their service delivery, there is more coverage, 4G, 5G, down to rural areas, so that people can depend on this data as it should be. Like Airtel said that data is life, and that is how we see it in this our era. You can't do without it. In as much as this tariff is high, the government can even decide to do a subsidy for the young people or startups and say, okay, since this thing has been approved, I don't think there will be any going back, even though the effect must have been seen and discussed before they make this approval. But they should look for a way to mitigate it for the young people.
Do you think that there was enough interaction, there was enough consultation before this happened? Because it appears it was just between the operators and the regulator. The subscribers and users like you were obviously not consulted or spoken to before this happened.
Yes.
Would you have preferred a much lower percentage of increase than the 50%, for instance?
Yes, there was no consultation to the consumers, let me call them. I think this was a high-level discussion between the telcos and the regulator, which is the NCC. To us, the tariff is high, is a high jump from what it is to 50% at one jump. It's high. It's going to affect a lot of things. A lot of people will take a lot of time to adjust to that price, and by then it would have affected them. But like I said earlier, if they will be faithful in utilizing this increased revenue, maybe with time we can adjust to it. Or the government can consider giving us subsidy on this increase, in this tariff. Because since the fuel
a government that is withdrawing all subsidies, is withdrawing subsidies from almost everything, and you are asking that same government to give you subsidy on
No, there are some agencies of government that we are proud of, like NITDA, National IT Development Agency. NIDA has been faithful in trying to subsidize or even provide a lot of infrastructure for the startups in Nigeria. They have been doing that on their own. When I benefited from NIDA, I don't know anybody there. And that's the way NIDA has been run. You don't need to know anybody. So long as you are in the ecosystem, they will do something for the ecosystem and you will benefit. So we will call on such bodies like NIDA and the likes of it to see how they can render this subsidy for the startups.
Okay. All right. Honorable Uche, let's bring you back in. I'm sure you are aware that, I mean, Labour has members in the telecommunications sector. Is Labour in touch with his members in that sector? Are they in favor of your planned protest, or do they side with their employers? You will need to unmute again, Honorable Uche. Unmute so that we can hear you.
You know how organization runs. You know, we take decisions, they are where our organs meet, and they are part of it. Let me make it clear also that maybe because of our brother just posted that we have not had any breach. Immediately he finished, I had a breach. I was no more following. So the thing showed that the breach is still ongoing. And I'm happy to reflect. He talked about that they did their study. But it showed that their study was on how they would do the increment and the justification for the increment. They paid no attention to the study of the capacity of the majority of the consumers. So that was not important because I wish you would show the empirical data. And to have that study, they should have been interviewed subscribers on the street who would have confirmed that the cost of subscribing is cheap. Then I would have agreed that they did a full study. Two, he gave out a very important information that people allow their daughters to be running. That means running means they are making money from the people based on their ignorance.
People, politics, and power, and we're looking at the telecom sector, the recent tariff hike, which of course the Labour is challenging and has decided to go on protest. Well, they call it warning protest, and that's slated for Tuesday, February 3rd. Of course, we'll see what happens after that, but we're still very much with our guest who is here in the studio, Engineer Ugwe Chidiebere, who is Chairman of Nigeria Computer Society in Imo State chapter. We hope that we're able to re-establish contact immediately with Mr. Tony Izuagbe Mokpae, who is the President Association of Telecommunications Companies, ARCON, and Honorable Uche Ekwe, who is Head of International Operations of NSA, who have been with us on the program. Indeed, Honorable Uche was speaking when, of course, we had that break. But Engineer Chidiebere, let's come to you very quickly, given the little time we have left. What would you consider should be the steps to be taken by both the NCC and the operators to improve, because you were talking about quality of services. Yes. I know that the NCC, as part of the approval process for the 50% increase, has said that operators must meet what they call quality of service benchmarks. What are those benchmarks? Well, how would that run? How would that happen?
Yes, for them to, is one thing to give order, and it's another thing to see that that order giving is achieved. What I would want NCC to do is to request for a baseline report from the telcos. That baseline should contain what is their infrastructure, the quality and quantity, and even the status of their current infrastructure, what areas have they covered with their 4G or 5G network, then how many employments do they have now? This baseline report should contain it. Then give them 2.5 years or before the 5 years that we are expecting to see a boom. You now ask them to bring another status report. You compare the status report of that next 2.5 years or next 3 years or next 5 years, depending on when they want to evaluate them. Compare it with what we have at the baseline. At the baseline, what's the quality of infrastructure they have? What is the quality of infrastructure now? Which areas have they covered as at baseline? And which area are they covering now that the revenue has been coming into them? By this, they will know and judge whether they are judiciously utilizing this revenue that is coming. Because why we are not completely against the tariff is based on the promise that we are going to have faster internet in Nigeria, for internet connectivity, that we are going to have more 5G, 4G coverage in certain areas, that we are going to have a more reliable connectivity so that we can hold our virtual meetings 2 hours and there will be no interruption. Nobody will be disconnected. I want to call someone in US, I can call from Nigeria and we talk for 2 hours without me being interrupted. Because when they call from there is no interruption. My friend in US will call me, we'll talk like for 1 hour, the line will not cut. But if I dare try to call, it doesn't work that way. From Apo here, people there use 2 SIM cards. One is Airtel, one is MTN. Because the network is not reliable. You use this one now, before you do 1 or 2 things, it's cut off. You now switch to the other one. You use it 10 minutes, it switch you off, you switch to the other one. That's what people there have been struggling with. I've been there, I've seen it. So if they are making promise that all these challenges we are having in connectivity will be solved with this tariff, let's go by it and watch them on it. Since NCC is the regulatory body and they have a monitoring committee or a monitoring team that will oversee that these things are the way it should be.
All right. Thank you, Engineer Chidebere. Let's see very quickly if we have a last word from our virtual guests. Okay, they are not there. So, Engineer Chidebere, assuming that the increase is a fait accompli, we cannot change it even if labor is
going on strike.
What are the options? Very quickly, what are the options that are open to subscribers, to users like you, and to the operators?
Yes, the options that I'm seeing there, especially for the startup, which is much dear to us. My boss, the founder of Young Innovators, is very passionate about what happens to the startups in Nigeria. What happens to the SMEs that depends on data for their operation? Because we know this is going to increase their operating cost and tell negatively on their profit. Even some of them might even lose business if nothing is done. We are saying that the NCC, since they have given this approval and may not go back, they should ensure that all the promises around this increment is achieved.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Engineer Ukwegbulam Chidebere is chairman, Nigeria Computer Society, Imo State Chapter. He's also director, Tech Ecosystem Development and Stakeholders Engagement for Young Innovators of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And of course, we had on the program Mr. Tony Izuagbe Mokpae, who is the president, Association of Telecommunications Companies, ATCON. We do apologize for that break, and we were unable to reestablish contact with him. We were also unable to reestablish contact with Honorable Uche Ekwe, who is the head of international relations of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NSC. But I'm sure that both of you have been able to put your points across in the course of the program. For you, our viewers, we thank you for investing your time with us, and we'll see you again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.